Well, good morning, everybody, and it's wonderful to be here with all of you, and to be here with our Minister of Government and Consumer Services, Minister Tracy McCharles. I'd also like to welcome someone who's very active in my community, a leader in my community, Maria McElhannis McLaughlin, who's the chair of CARP Etobicoke and has been very instrumental in working with me on the issue that we're going to be talking about today. Thank you, Maria, for being here. I represent a riding called Etobicoke Centre, and every month in my riding I hold a seniors advisory group meeting where I hear from seniors about the issues that are important to them. And when I first started holding these meetings, I heard about the issues that you would expect to hear about. I heard about healthcare, and I heard about transportation and about housing. But then I started to hear about an issue that I didn't expect to hear so much about, and that was consumer protection. And in particular, I started to hear from seniors about their concerns about door-to-door sales scams. And one senior said something to me I'll never forget. She said, all these other issues, healthcare, transportation, are really important, but we really need to do something to make sure people feel comfortable in opening their door, that they feel secure in their own homes, that they don't feel that they can be taken advantage of at their very own doorstep. And so I started to do research and talk to people, and I started to hear story after story from constituents and from consumers about aggressive and misleading sales practices that were sometimes being used to sell certain products at people's doors, to convince people to sign contracts that weren't to their benefit. And what I discovered was that sometimes salespeople use these tactics to sell products that in a more expensive way than was the industry standard. They convinced them to buy products they didn't need, products that didn't perform as advertised or didn't perform at all. These contracts often had high cancellation fees, or they couldn't be canceled at all. And so they sold them products or services that just didn't work. And so, and while this was an issue that cuts across all ages, people of all ages, consumers of all ages and all backgrounds, I was particularly disturbed by the fact that the disproportionate number of people who were being affected by this, who were being targeted by these practices, were vulnerable people. And after hearing these stories, I heard too many stories from seniors, from concerned constituents about these aggressive and misleading sales practices. I felt that something had to be done. It was beyond reprehensible to me that there were businesses, that there were people who had a business model based on taking advantage of our most vulnerable consumers. And so 2 years ago, I introduced a private members bill called the Door-to-Door Sales Prohibition Act. First numbered, it was bill number 193, and then it was renumbered as bill 14. And that bill, that private members bill, would have banned the sale door-to-door of certain products where we had widespread misleading and aggressive sales practices. Products like furnaces, water heaters, air conditioners, and water treatment devices. And what the private members bill called for was that if a contract was signed that violated the sales ban, that the contract would be voided, and that penalties would be imposed on the company that was breaking the legislation. And I'm proud that not long after that, the Minister of Government and Consumer Services, that our government introduced Bill 59, the Putting Consumer First Act, which, after it passed, gave the government the power to ban the sale door-to-door of certain products. And shortly after that, not so long ago, regulations were released that announced which products were part of that ban. So I'm incredibly proud to be here today. I'm incredibly proud to be here with Minister Tracy McCharles, who's led this work on behalf of the Government of Ontario. I'm incredibly proud that the government adopted my private members bill and adopted my advocacy on this issue. But most importantly, I'm just very proud that we're here today to make an important announcement that will help protect consumers across Ontario, not just in Etobicoke, but across our province. And with that, I'd like to introduce Tracy McCharles, our Minister of Government and Consumer Services.
Thanks, Yvan. Stay up here.
Sure.
Don't disappear. Thanks, Yvan. Good morning, everyone. It's great to be here today. And as always, I like to begin by taking a moment to recognize that we're gathered on the traditional territory of several Indigenous nations. And I want to pay particular respects to the Mississaugas of the New Credit in our use of these lands. Protecting consumers in their homes is of the utmost importance to our government. And I'd like to thank MPP Baker for bringing forward his private members bill, which prompted our government to act on this. He's a tireless advocate for consumer rights, and indeed this bill was a genesis of the legislation that we're dealing with now. So thank you so much for the work you do. It's fantastic. And in recent years, we've increasingly heard stories about aggressive door-to-door salespeople who refuse to take no for an answer. I don't think I know anyone who hasn't had that experience. Using hard sales tactics and at times misrepresenting products or services being offered, these salespeople have inflicted real economic harm on consumers. Some residents are presented with and are pressured to sign confusing contracts that they may not understand and may end up being very costly for them. And this continues to be a very serious problem throughout the province. And we're very concerned about vulnerable seniors or newcomers facing aggressive tactics at their door. But really, all Ontarians should be better protected from aggressive and misleading door-to-door contracts and sales tactics. That's why I'm very pleased here today to be with you to tell you about our action the government is taking to protect people of Ontario against aggressive door-to-door contracting practices. So as of March 1st, we are banning unsolicited door-to-door solicitation for contracting for a number of household appliances and services with a few limited exceptions. The appliances and services include air conditioners and air purifiers or cleaners, furnaces and duct cleaning services, water heaters, water treatment devices, including water filters and water softeners, and any bundles of these kinds of goods, such as HVAC equipment. The steps are necessary when you consider the government has received more than 4,000 complaints and inquiries about door-to-door sales and rental agreements from 2016 to 2017. And I know the water heater complaints have continued to rise significantly as well. So our ministry takes very seriously any consumer complaints, and they're pretty significant, those numbers. And we are able to track these complaints and help us inform where the legislation should go. And of course, deceptive door-to-door or contracting practices are always a top concern. And the most significant areas of concern are misrepresentation and cancellation of contracts. And that's why we're committed to protecting Ontario's consumers when they enter into contracts in their home and making sure that consumers have the information they need to make good decisions. As of March 1st, any contracts that are signed in violation of these rules related to door-to-door contract solicitation or as a result of misleading marketing materials left at a consumer's home will be considered void, and consumers will be able to keep the goods and services with no obligations. Business soliciting for these goods and services will also be required to keep a record of how they made contact with the consumer entering the contract. Contracts signed in the home for these goods and services will also have a 10-day cooling off period, so consumers have the option of canceling a contract during this time. We're taking strong action to respond to what we have found to be a very persistent problem. We introduced legislation in 2013 to regulate water heater door-to-door contracts. However, it didn't go far enough to solve the problem of deceptive door-to-door contract tactics, and as I said, complaints continue to rise with respect to water heaters. So our new rules will go a step further, essentially prohibiting unsolicited door-to-door contracts for the main goods and services we continue to receive inquiries and complaints about, with a few limited exceptions. However, consumers can still enter contracts in their home if they initiate contact with the business and invite them into their home for the purpose of signing a contract for a restricted good or service. Contracts can also be entered into if a consumer has an existing contract in place with the business and they invite them into their home knowing the business may solicit for a restricted good or service. The bottom line is we want to stop players that mislead or misrepresent. There are examples of such players giving consumers the impression they work for a better known, reputable company, or even a government agency when they do not. And I know that's a lot of fun when they come to my door. I'm sure you find that too, Yvan, when they find out what our jobs are. But my focus is on consumers who can be misled by these unscrupulous vendors trying to portray themselves as a government agency or some other organization. Some, as Yvonne alluded to, may even misrepresent the value of the product to make it sound like it's a really great deal and it's better than it is. They may misrepresent the efficiency or condition of a home appliance or tell you the product won't cost you anything. There are also instances of businesses that may attempt to get you to sign a confusing contract that makes it difficult for you to cancel or leads you to believe that a cancellation is not even possible. And we've certainly seen those kinds of stories in the media very recently and for the last while. They may even register a lien against your property or goods, causing difficulty should you try to sell your home. And we've heard about the heart-wrenching stories of salespeople taking advantage of vulnerable people. The new laws coming into effect will ensure people are not being taken advantage of through unsolicited door-to-door contracting. They will help level the playing field for businesses that use good business practices. They will better protect people's hard-earned money and boost consumer confidence. The steps our government is taking to protect Ontarians against aggressive and misleading door-to-door contracting tactics will help give Ontarians the peace of mind they deserve in the place they call home. Thank you. Merci. So, with that, we'll take questions. And we have a news release, right? Available to folks? Good. And I want to thank everyone for being here, especially Maria McLaughlin. She's a representative of a local CARP association at Etobicoke Center. And it's fantastic that you're here and being a great advocate for better consumer protection. So thank you very much. Thank you.
Thanks, Mr.
Okay.
Yep.